This episode is brought to you by Ghost Patch. Ghost Patch is a law enforcement owned and operated company specializing in patches, coins, and flex shields. Quality is top priority with low prices. They always offer free design work and never charge mold or setup fees. Stop letting the big companies rip you off and check out Ghost Patch at ghostpatch.com and ghostpatchcustom.com. Now to the next story.
So what she did is she created a trauma treatment that focuses on the belief that we tell ourselves about ourselves and about others and about the world. And it's a structured technique where the client is able to be in control the entire time. So it's not like I'm doing something to my client that they can't quite understand. I'm actually educating them on structured techniques that they're going to use. So we're still rewiring the brain, but we're rewiring it through learning.
I just like to set the expectation because some people, they think that like they're gonna come in and I'm having this symptom and we're gonna reduce this symptom and we're just gonna stay there, right? I'm gonna get some coping skills and then I'm gonna leave out of here. Those symptoms are there for a reason and we're gonna get to the root of that so we can pull out those roots.
Working in emergency communications got me into the first responder life in general, and realizing what that world and the toll that it kind of takes on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Coming from a psychologist, of course, having those skills already molded into myself, realizing that there were a lot of people out there that did not have these skills.
It's gotten better, but we're not there yet. We are not there yet until we stop being punitive about people getting help in all levels, and it doesn't matter where you work, but especially in the first responder space. And normalize that, allow that to be okay, just like any other health problem, because it is a health problem.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community. And now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Counseling theories provide frameworks for understanding human behavior and guiding the therapeutic process with major categories including humanistic, cognitive, behavioral, psychoanalytic, constructionist, and systematic approaches. They help counselors develop effective interventions and tailor their approaches to individual client needs. Anyone that listens to this show knows full well at the show's origins and its mission in addressing mental health in the first responder community. Today we are sitting down with a roundtable with some of the people that help heal our warriors on this department and in the Metroplex. We are proud to talk with some of our amazing ATO counselors. All right, this podcast never shies away from the opportunity to provide education to our listeners and our first responders and their families that listen. And you also know that we have a network of culturally competent counselors within the ATO. And today we were very honored to sit down with Amanda Noyes. Say hello.
Hello.
We're also sitting with Cydney Frizzel. Thank
Good
you for being
morning.
here.
Good morning.
The great Tempa Sherrill is here.
Hi, good morning. It's great to be here.
And also one of my coworkers that I annoy every day when I come into work is Sasha Kim. Sasha, thanks for being here.
And I'm happy to be here, Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hear that in her voice. So I wanted to get all these great minds together. I do want to give a mention and shout out to Courtney Runnels. She was supposed to be here. She cannot be here. There was an emergency at her department she had to deal with, but she is going to be missed, and she really wanted to come on, but I told her, I said, well, I happen to know the host, and I'm pretty sure that they'll have you on another time, so we'll make it happen. I want to get into basically just y'all as counselors and what you provide and how you service the ATO, how you service the first responder community and their families. And I just kind of want to showcase what we offer. We've had on a lot of the other counselors that we had on as well. And I just want to take this opportunity to kind of have a round table, the meeting of the minds, when the different modalities you use. Y'all good with that?
Yeah.
That's good.
Amanda, kind of tell us about yourself. You've actually been on the mic before. I think you were on for the message from the host with the Dallas DA's Wellness Unit. So just kind of like tell the listener a little bit about yourself, your practice, and where you're located.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm really honored to be here, especially with the fellow ATO therapists. I think I actually am the only non-first responder at this table, so I want to say thank you to everybody who is here. I'm very humbled to be sitting with these incredible women, and Joe, and Kent. So my name's Amanda Noyes. I'm a licensed clinical social worker supervisor, and my practice is Finding Freedom Therapy. I am a civilian, but I've had the very cool and rare opportunity as a clinician to work in a lot of kind of hands-on experiences as a clinical social worker. So I've been able to do victim services, and I went out with the police officers and helped with the families if there was a death or someone was in crisis, so the police officers could do their jobs. I did quite a few death notifications. I've worked in multiple level 1 trauma centers in the ICUs and the emergency departments. I was there when all of the work was being done, so all the graphic details I was normally present for, and then I was with the families and was the one to provide the updates and oftentimes the worst case scenario news, and worked the mommy and baby ward and any fetal demise, perinatal loss. We actually were there and supported the nursing staff by taking care of the babies and helping the families get to say goodbye. I've gotten to work multiple hurricanes with the National Guard, and actually kind of gone out during any of the major things that are happening and supported everybody who was hit by those natural disasters. So it's been a long slew of different things where I've actually gotten to be present. So while I'm not a first responder, I do have a little bit of an understanding as a civilian. I also have had a lot of, actually I've been doing this for over 20 years now, which makes me feel wonderfully old.
Think how I feel.
He used to look young, Joe.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. So
I put on moisturizer today.
I'm proud of you. That's actually needed for everybody. So what kind of led me to trauma was I did work inpatient with active duty military, and it was one of the most amazing experiences. My family actually had gone through a really horrific loss when my brother-in-law was killed in Iraq, and that was devastating for our family. And so I got to watch how complicated a loss like that can be. And so I was very passionate about working with military. Multiple people in my family were military. And so I got to do active duty trauma. And we actually did such a good job that we were sending people back into active duty combat zones. And so it was my work there that led me to realize we don't have enough treatment modalities out in the public for people who don't necessarily need inpatient, but want to continue to do the jobs that they love. So with that, I went and started Finding Freedom Therapy, and it is a specialized trauma treatment therapy practice, small but mighty. There's 4 clinicians, and we do evidence-based modalities because I realized when we are actually trained in the modalities that work, we can show very prominent results, and our clients are very successful in reducing those symptoms. So that's a little bit about my background. I've got an amazing clinician, Christina Cerna, who's a Navy veteran. I've got Mark Chapman, who actually worked with the Department of Defense in Germany. And we now see kids. I'm actually very excited about that. I don't like it when I wanted to wait for the right therapist. So I found someone who was a nanny for 20 years, worked with neurodivergence, all of the kind of harder cases, oppositional defiance disorder. And she is now seeing our kids. That's Jess Harris. So that's a little bit about our practice.
And where are you located?
We are located in North Dallas.
Okay.
A lot of our listeners are police officers and probably don't know what treatment modalities actually means. Could you explain that just a touch?
Absolutely. So a lot of therapists, in fact, pretty much every therapist you go to is going to say, hey, we treat trauma, because they have their graduate degree and then 3,000 hours experience in doing therapy. But for someone to actually be a trauma therapist, they need to go and get trained in specific modalities. A modality is a type of treatment that's been tested and proven through multiple studies to be effective. So most of the gold standard models are have about an 80% efficacy. So they have proven that they actually do work and people will reduce symptoms by using specific treatment modalities. So it's not that we just go into trauma treatment and sit on the couch and talk about our feelings and are just hanging out. We actually do some pretty heavy work that helps us get healthy. And there's some amazing neurobiology is catching up. So there's multiple different options, and many of them you don't actually even have to process the trauma itself. Some of them you process about your thoughts and feelings surrounding the trauma. Some of them you don't even have to talk about the trauma at all. So there's lots of options, but I highly recommend that if you're going to do trauma therapy, you see someone who is certified or professionally trained in one of the gold standard trauma modalities, or one of the ones that are being studied. There's a lot of them that are up and coming. They're not technically gold standard yet, but I have no doubt that they will be. We're just getting more and more data. So yeah, lots of options.
Thank you. Awesome. Tempa, you're up.
Thank you. Well said, Amanda.
Thank you.
Explaining the modalities, because that's important, and a lot of people don't really have that knowledge. It's good to know that. So I'm Tempa Sherrill. My practice is called the Brave Fight. Our brick and mortar is in downtown Fort Worth, and we also have an office in Cleburne. We are working on building up services out in the more rural areas in that direction, around Cleburne. So we're excited about that. And then, of course, we serve virtually statewide across Texas as well. My background is a long one, because I am probably the oldest clinician at this table. But I did get into this as a second career. Before that, I was a paramedic in my 20s for a few years. Former paramedic, I realized that I would not be able to actually pay my bills if I stayed in the field. But it was a wonderful experience in my life, and I do miss it, actually. I went on to get into the teaching field for 18 years, and I married in 1992. I married my husband, who is a Marine, and he was about to get out of the Marine Corps. He stayed in reserves for a little while after we got married, but he served in the Marine Corps, and the week after I pinned him at his induction as a police officer in Abilene, Texas, we got married. So he's been a police officer our whole marriage, and a veteran. He went back into the Army Reserves in 2007 and was deployed to Afghanistan in 2008. So that was the kind of turning point in our basket getting turned over, in terms of I felt a calling after that. So the police career, it has its ups and downs, its roller coaster rides. As a family, you just adapt and you figure that out. But the deployment really kind of just turned it all upside down. And after that, when he came back with 18 years of police work under his belt at that time, plus the deployment, it changed things for him drastically.
How so?
He didn't realize this, but he was very wounded. He had some pretty chronic PTSD going on. It got worse, over the months. And so we talked him into going to the VA to get some help. He did that and got some good care there. It was up and down. He was back 2 weeks after he came home. He was back working in the police out on patrol. And I don't want to take too much time with this story, but
No, go ahead.
okay, he was 3.5 years into working in patrol from his deployment, and it had been up and down. He had really never gone to his command to let them know what was going on, for fear, of repercussions for that. And when he did go, he was starting to feel unsafe, starting to lose some memory, like forgetting where streets were. And so it was starting to scare him. And he was in treatment at the VA at the time. So he asked for a temporary change of duty to get his stuff straight and heal, so that he could stay in the profession. It wasn't like he had no incidents or major events because of it, but he just
Daily
knew.
struggle.
Yeah, he just knew that he needed to get things straight before he went back out on patrol. So that he went to his command at that time and kind of revealed what was going on, did a fit for duty. They requested a fit for duty. His psychologist at the VA did a beautiful job of explaining that he's not a danger. He's good. He needs a temporary amount of time to heal. And as soon as he turned that in, his sergeant came out to our house and basically collected all of his stuff in a plastic bag and said, "You can't be a police officer here." And it was all because he had a PTSD diagnosis. So that moment right there, I knew that I needed to serve this community as long as I'm able to in my life.
What year was that?
That was in 2013. I had already gone back to school to become, a therapist, just because of the journey we had been on since 2009 when he came home. So when he came home is when I said, I'm going back to school. We got into our own counseling. We had a difficult time finding culturally competent care. And I'm at this table with these amazing women who do such great work. We didn't have that back in 2009. Things have changed. It has evolved. Thank goodness. But at that point, I felt a calling. I left teaching, went back to school. And so that is kind of the journey that we've been on. My husband left police work for a few years and went into corporate work, and he's back in uniform now. So that's a really huge deal that he can come back full circle. So he retired the first time with 22 years, and now he's back in uniform. So I'm really proud of him for
That's
the
amazing.
healing, the journey he's been on.
That's amazing.
Well, that says a lot about him as a servant, right? He served in the military, then he wanted to be a police officer to continue to serve.
Yeah.
He was told you're not fit to serve, and then went and got himself where he wanted to be again so he could return to service. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I feel like that all of us here at the table have our whys, just like Amanda shared, and all of that matters. It matters to our clients. That authenticity that we bring to the table is what helps them feel safe that they're in the right place.
No, definitely. I wouldn't have gone to see anybody if I hadn't heard what their actual background was and why they do things. So it's great that we can share this on this platform here. I do have a question, though. Where were you a paramedic?
Oh, back out in West Texas, in the Haskell County area.
It's pretty remarkable that you could be a paramedic anywhere and make less than a teacher, because you said you couldn't pay your bills as a paramedic.
thinking
Yeah, that's why. It was rural America.
So you're getting paid by the call. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then what did you teach?
Theater and English.
So high school level or junior high?
High school.
Well,
Yeah.
bless you for that, because I'm married to a teacher who's been through the high school and junior high, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody at this point. It's really bad now. A little bit different then, but the kids now after COVID and missing 2 or 3 years of basically how to be a human.
Yes.
They lost a lot on that. So it's a major haul to try to teach anybody anything these days.
My heart goes out to all of them.
Yes, for sure.
I'm grateful where I'm at right now.
It is a brave fight story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Speaking of brave fight, I do want to take an opportunity to talk about somebody that is involved with Brave Fight and also involved with the DPD Wellness Unit. Miss Kim, it's you.
Oh, you're talking about me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So I am actually new to the game, so I'm really honored to sit at the table with these ladies who have done tremendous work and paved the way for me, right? I've been on the department for 10 years, Dallas Police Department. I am currently in the wellness unit. I unfortunately get to work with Joe every day. I need my own trauma treatment from that. But
I hear you laughing every day. You're welcome.
It is true. It is true. But I got into police work knowing that this was just a detour. My goal was always to go to counseling. Didn't know why the detour was police work until my second week on training, off of Little T. So after we go through training, we have a period of time where we have to ride with the seasoned officer. And so I was on Little T, and July 7th happened. And just seeing the aftermath of that, the lack of coping skills that were available for my people, I realized, okay, this makes sense now, right? This is why this detour had to happen. And so I finally went back to school because I love the job. I love police work. I worked Southeast God's Country, and I had a lot of fun out in patrol. But I finally went back to school, got my license, met Tempa at a meeting when I joined the wellness unit that I had to go to, heard about the mission that she was doing in her practice, and I wanted to be a part of it. She was like, "Do you want to interview?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I would love to do that. And so now Tempa is my supervisor. I am a licensed professional counseling associate, so I'm still working on my hours, and so I'm under the supervision of Tempa. I am really honored to be a part of the Brave Fight. One of the biggest things about being in this space is it's important to have culturally competent counselors, right, that know the job, right, that have done it or have experience with it. But also within that culturally competency, there has to be cultural competence, right? And so whenever I was looking for a therapist, not only did I want somebody that understood the job, but I also wanted somebody that understood my walk as a Black woman, right? And there's not a whole lot of Black women, Black people in general in this space of culturally competent first responder counselors. And so seeing that gap, I was like, oh, I think that's where I need to fill that gap. I need to fill that hole. And so that's just kind of what, where my why lies. So.
And she's amazing.
I paid her to say that.
She's all right. She's all right.
She'll do.
Yeah.
Fill a gap.
I do have editing skills, and I can take certain parts out.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will.
Miss Frizzel, you're up.
Hi, my name is Cydney Frizzel, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I retired from the Grand Prairie Police Department in 2023 as an emergency communications specialist. I know a lot of times, we are just the dispatcher, but we play a large role in the police department and fire department as well. My career as a therapist actually started at birth. I'm a child of a psychologist, and I grew up saying, I will never, ever do this. And he told me it's a calling. It doesn't matter how many textbooks you read or how many classes you take, but it's something that comes from within. And I went through things in life. I always tell my clients, I don't sit on this side because my life's been perfect. And so going through things in life, I relocated from California to Memphis and then ended up in Texas. And when I got here, I was just looking for a job. I ended up at the police department, which turned out to truly be a blessing. And while there, decided to continue to go back to school to work on my master's degree in community counseling. Working in emergency communications got me into the first responder life in general, and realizing what that world and the toll that it kind of takes on you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Coming from a psychologist, of course, having those skills already molded into myself, realizing that there were a lot of people out there that did not have these skills. So I originally got my master's degree in 2012. We went to 12 hours, which caused me to not be able to complete all my hours at that time for my license because I was a single mom of 3, and basically life happens. I ended up joining peer support with Grand Prairie. We had an officer that committed suicide. We had line of duty deaths occur. And so really began working with Courtney Runnels when she came to Grand Prairie, and she kind of pretty much took me under her wing. And once she realized, hey, you kind of have kind of been in this field and kind of digging around here. And so she really encouraged me to go back because at that time period, my license expired. And so I had to go and retest. I have my LPC which is the intern back then. It's changed to LPCA now. And it'd been 10 years since I've been in school, and I'm like, no, I don't think I want to do this. But she really encouraged me and pushed me to do so. So after 10 years, I went back and I retested, and I realized this is where I am supposed to be, helping those that I walk side by side with, and it being a blessing to be able to do so. So I started working hard on peer support. I've trained, CISM trained with crisis intervention. And so going out to respond in different areas with Courtney and with the readiness group, just kind of going out doing things with them, really built that up as well. Then I have worked basically doing internships with different agencies, different organizations, and realized that there are a lack of culturally competent African-American therapists down in Ellis County, and decided to go ahead and open a private practice down there. And since I have been there, first responders have been coming from everywhere, and realizing that the need it's very much needed everywhere, but specifically down there in that area, and it is very hard to locate anyone. So I started serving and working with our population in that area, retired, and just kind of been doing it ever since. Also, my husband retired from Grand Prairie Police Department as well. He was there for 30 years as a major crimes detective. And so also just, talking with him and realizing the lack of services back when we started. And, you come from that mentality of suck it up, get over it, or go find a new job.
Or drink. Go drink.
Or go drink.
Yeah.
Yes, or go drink. And as a matter of fact, I remember when we first started, they'd have what we called choir practice afterwards, and you'd go and
We called our safety meetings.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's what really got me into it, and kind of going from there. And since then, while I was doing my internship, I worked down at the Ellis County Children's Advocacy Center and really started working trauma with children down in that area. So my office is located in Waxahachie, and that's pretty much where I am and how I kind of got here.
Yeah, and you're fairly new to the Sissy Officer Foundation as one of our counselors, and in Courtney, you come very highly recommended by Courtney, and we also heard of you too, and said, okay, and you're a jack of all trades, but you also have a very sharp tool in your tool belt we're going to get to later, dealing with children, and that is also a very unique skill set that not a lot of people have.
Yes.
You mentioned the readiness group. Is that what Grand Prairie calls their their wellness unit, or what is the readiness group?
The Readiness Group is a different organization that actually goes out and uses a lot of psychoeducation for first responders.
Yeah, they're quite impressive. Cydney got me involved, and Sasha has already been involved with them. We're going to be looking at some things moving forward for the department.
Yes.
I like the name of Readiness. It's got some meaning there.
It does.
Yeah.
So I want to get into some of the different modalities, and this can be everybody chime in, and because there's, as Amanda touched on, there are so many different modalities, and there's not a one size fit all. Because what may work on me is not going to work on Ken or Cydney or Amanda or Sasha or Tempa. So we just kind of want to touch on some of these to educate the listener on what is actually out there, what modalities that are being used for us. So I want to get into CPT. Does somebody want to jump in on that?
It's going to be Amanda.
Sasha's pointing. So kind of what we were saying, when it comes to therapy, especially if the listeners aren't familiar with it, I do highly recommend finding a therapist who is trained in a trauma modality. And as we said, that's a trauma treatment that's been tested and proven to help a vast majority of people. But I'll also say that 70% of how effective therapy is how much you connect with the person sitting across from you. So if you walk in and you see your therapist and it reminds you of your second grade coach that you hated, it's not going to go well. So 70% is how well you can connect. That's what Tempa was talking about with the cultural connection and cultural competence. I think we need to remember that making sure that we find a therapist that we connect to is vital when it comes to trauma therapy. So we talk a lot about the modalities, and I think it was Tempa that said this at one point. It's kind of like you find the therapist who really loves a modality, they're going to do the best work for that modality, but it doesn't mean that the modality is exactly necessarily perfect for you or not. So most of the modalities that are considered gold standard, and for trauma right now, that is prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, and EMDR. And those are the three gold standards most widely accepted, depending on what you're looking at, because different organizations actually rank them. Prolonged exposure is the one that's kind of been around the longest, but a lot of people don't love it because you do have to process the trauma itself, although they have rotated that a little bit. And I'm going to talk about written exposure therapy a little bit later. But cognitive processing therapy is my baby, and I've been doing it for, almost 15 years now. So cognitive processing therapy is an evidence-based modality that was developed specifically for PTSD. So they found out in the 70s that when rape victims would go to the emergency department, they weren't getting any support. There was actually quite a bit of victim shaming and victim blaming. What did you do wrong? How did you get there? Not why the reactions were so strong. And Patricia Resick had looked at that, and she was working in the emergency departments and realized as a psych student, she had no idea how to help them. And she's a research person, so she went back and researched everything she could possibly find, and over time realized there really wasn't much going on. And the information that was out there thought everything was based in fear. And at that time, we didn't even have the diagnosis called PTSD. I forget which one it was, but I'm sure it was shell shock or some other name at that time. And so she started to develop a modality, a trauma treatment that specifically helped people and their symptoms, and realized it wasn't actually still about the active fear. A lot of the people were operating, a lot of the researchers and the psychologists at the time were operating that we were still scared even after the event. And she didn't actually see that. She saw that we had what she called stuck points. And so over the years, Patricia Resick, Candace Monson, and Kathleen Chard, who worked with the VA and at multiple different educational institutions where they do the research, kept kind of honing and growing this model. So this model has been built up specifically using veterans and using people who have had immediate trauma. They were being seen directly after. So I think a lot of the things that first responders see on a daily basis and the people you help, these are the people they were helping, as well as veterans returning from deployment. And so what she did is she created a trauma treatment that focuses on the belief that we tell ourselves about ourselves and about others and about the world. And it's a structured technique where the client is able to be in control the entire time. So it's not like I'm doing something to my client that they can't quite understand. I'm actually educating them on structured techniques that they're going to use. So we're still rewiring the brain, but we're rewiring it through learning. And we're going to get into neurobiology and how that's changed and honestly sped up. But I do like the old school approach where we're rewiring it and understanding how we think about the trauma and how we think about the world. And if we can figure that out, we can actually, even if we get traumatized again, we are less likely to experience PTSD again. So that's kind of one of the reasons I love CPT is, number one, I can attack multiple traumas at once, kind of based off of these themes and different areas of what our thoughts surrounding the traumas are. So not only the trauma itself, but how we've been reacting since we went through that trauma and how we're looking at the world, which is often where we get stuck. So when I have officers come in, or fire or dispatch, communication, the multiple first responders that we forget, which is a wide range. When any of these people come in, it's not normally one trauma. It's what I call a basket full of trauma. So that's why I like this model. Yeah, it's cumulative. So that's what CPT does. We are able to do very structured techniques. The client is in control the entire time, and we can actually hit on multiple traumas at once. And we're not actually talking in depth about the trauma itself. We're talking about how it impacted us. So I've actually done an entire trauma on gummy bears because I've worked with some pretty high level people. So
Haribo?
Yeah, no, just it was a code. So they didn't feel comfortable telling me what actually happened. That's a whole other story. I got to stop bringing that up in here. I forget.
No, you're a safe space. Nobody listens to this anyway.
But yeah, so you don't actually have to talk about the trauma. It's the thoughts and feelings surrounding it and how it impacts you. So it's very profound.
Do you see a lot of that with moral injury? That some of the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we treat, and that's also one of the things, because moral injury has to do a lot about like who we are as our moral compass. And sometimes that's spiritual based, sometimes it's not. But cognitive processing therapy is very, very profound at being able to address moral injury, because it's similar to PTSD, but it is not the same.
Does anybody want to jump in on that?
Amen, Amanda. She's like the CPT expert in
Not sure I'd say that, but thank you.
my world.
Yeah, well spoken.
Yes.
Well, that's a good reputation to have in the circles. So I would imagine that you're talking about moral injury and using CPT to combat it is something so awful happens. We're so aghast at our core of what we've seen, and we have a hard time wrestling with that another human is able to do that.
Yeah. So that's kind of where the second half of CPT comes in. So the first half of cognitive processing therapy, we focus on the trauma itself. The second half, we focus on how we are based in the world in regards to safety, power control, intimacy, trust, and esteem. So once we've been traumatized, we're not always just dealing with the trauma itself. We're dealing with how we look at the world. And that's where moral injury comes in, because it's kind of like a heartbreak and a devastation with the world's not what we thought, or we're not who we thought, or our command is not who we thought. And so we're able to address those beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world.
Do you see a lot of veterans that they wrestle with that because then they go off to other countries and obviously it works much different, and the way people look at life itself is different?
Yes. And we look at that when you're assessing for PTSD. Have you seen kind of the devastation of what poverty can look like, and how that impacts things? But my veterans see it everywhere they go, but I actually have quite a few first responders who see it.
Do you feel like she just went down a checklist of everything that you've dealt with?
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm listening to what she's saying. I'm like, yep.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
then
a long list.
If I could chime in
Sure.
on that, to normalize this for all humans. You don't have to be a first responder or a veteran to experience these things, because any kind of traumatic adverse experience changes our view of the world and the people around us. It changes how safe or unsafe we feel. So just to normalize that, because anyone listening to this could have the same symptoms, these same reactions, and I love that you brought that up, Amanda, because it's so common across all humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of magnified, though, with the first responders, because you usually get into any sort of first responder work wanting to help people.
Yes.
And then you find that it's very difficult to help people just because you're not always dealing with the people that want help.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that compounds even more. Now you're dealing with poverty,
Yes.
right? The effects of poverty. I mentioned it over and over again. When we worked at Southeast, it's a poverty-stricken division. But then when you finally get out of Southeast, you realize there's other people in the world. And so I had some very serious jaded views of society in general, just because that's what I dealt with every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, the state of the world thing, the way you look at everything now because of your experiences with that, I'm telling you, guys are just creating a checklist of all the things I need to bring up.
Yeah, it could breed cynicism.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it
Yeah.
does breed
Yeah.
cynicism. Yeah. I live with that guy.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I see him every once in a while.
Yeah.
And
Every
that's
time I look in the mirror.
so were all three of you Southeast at one point?
Kent and I were there. We're much more seasoned and older than Sasha. I was. No, I left
Been
Southeast
cooking
and
for a while.
yeah. I left. She was probably in middle school when I started there.
I think I was elementary.
Okay.
Middle of
No.
elementary, though. We'll call it even.
You're
I'm-
older than you think, Joe.
Yeah, I'm gonna need somebody to talk to me after this.
I was like 7. Just,
You're in good
just to
hands,
put that
Joe.
out there.
But no, Sasha, when did you get to Southeast?
2015.
Yeah, I'd left that. That's when I left it and
You're
went
not
to South
that
Central.
younger.
Yeah, you're that,
You got more experience.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Tempa's saying, so kind of basing it off of what Kent and Tempa are hitting. So cognitive processing therapy was actually started for rape victims. So this can actually help first responders also, not only if they've been traumatized themselves, but what they're seeing. So when you see these strong reactions from people who've been traumatized. So when Resick had started this, and she saw these rape victims who weren't okay, and then weren't okay for very long periods of time. And to Tempa's point, I'm pretty sure all of us have been traumatized. It's kind of what we've been through, how many times, how compounded it is. Our genetic makeup, multiple things lead into whether we're going to have PTSD or not. But I think we're all in a world where trauma is possible, and keeping an idea of what someone might be going through, and that a trauma from childhood may dramatically impact our adulthood. So we see it in first responders, where when they don't get the treatment they need, it compounds and it hits every aspect of their life. But some of the people that first responders deal with, and I'd venture to say a vast majority of the people that first responders are dealing with are traumatized. And so a lot of the reactions that first responders see that kind of make them have that cynicism for the world is because they're dealing with constant trauma. I had a veteran who I've had for years, and he's like a legit combat Ramadi vet, like all the intense combat. And he always tells me, he's like, I hate veterans. And I'm like, you don't hate veterans. What you hate is the trauma responses that veterans have. And he's like, oh. So when people are traumatized and they don't get the help, and there's so much help out there, y'all. And like when Tempa and all of them get into like the neurobiology of how things are coming along, it's very exciting. We can get better, but when people don't get better, don't know how to get better, don't have access to care, it can lead to really negative traits that we associate with kind of crappy people. But in reality, I think most of the people that are hurting in this world are probably traumatized.
Yeah, it comes out sideways.
Yep.
If there is so much help available, why is it not more utilized? And how do you actually get word of mouth out about your services? Because there's no real commercials on TV for it, right? I don't watch a whole lot of TV anymore, so I couldn't
see
tell
a
you.
lot of Ozempic.
Yeah, there's a lot of drugs, on TV. But even like some of the podcasts I listen to, actually talking, BetterHelp or Talkspace, or there's a couple of things that are going around right now that I'm hearing more about. But how do you guys actually try to get your services out to the general public?
Well, I think a lot of us use social media, and we have websites, and we belong to networks that we connect. Like, for example, Amanda and I are with the DFW First Responder Support Network, which it's a We're just a group of people bringing first responders and clinicians together to normalize it, to help them see that we're there for them. But word of mouth is the most powerful tool. People have good experiences and they tell other people, and then they tell other people. That is the most powerful tool of getting the word out. So if you know of someone who does really good work, tell someone about them that might need to know them.
Well, I want to ask this, whoever wants to jump on this answer, is like the movement of whatever bumper sticker saying you want to say, breaking the stigma, smashing the stigma, or whatever. It's probably the best that I've ever seen, and I've been a cop for 28 years. This is the best I've ever seen, and the biggest step in the right direction that I've seen in this profession.
Yes, that's amazing. I love that phrase because that's what we have to do. And it's gotten better, but we're not there yet.
No.
We are not there yet until we stop being punitive about people getting help in all levels. And it doesn't matter where you work, but especially in the first responder space. And normalize that, allow that to be okay, just like any other health problem, because it is a health problem.
Yes.
Then that's when the stigma will get better.
I think that if we start to give the people the help instead of the punishment that you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That people will be more prone to ask for help sooner, and it doesn't get to the point where you are at a point where they can say you need to leave because you're not fit.
That's right.
And so there's a huge first step, and after that it gets a little bit easier.
I think a big thing as well is coming outside of our offices. I do a lot of going to a lot of the different agencies with the readiness group. That's who I predominantly am with. And it's kind of going out there and that psychoeducation, because getting out there and letting them know, because a lot of times as a first responder, the last thing you want to do is ask for help. And so the reality is, and we also don't know, well, who am I going to see? Where am I going? What do they look like? Are they going to judge me? And so when we just go in and they see that we're actually everyday people that have gone through life as well, you're not going to be judged. It kind of builds that connection as well. And then it is the word of mouth, because a lot of people do say, oh, this was pretty cool. I didn't know it was going to go this way. And then they go out and tell someone else. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is education, us having to get out there. And, you know, just like you see people pushing CDs and pushing Ozempic and pushing everything else, we have to go out there and we have to push it and represent, because you're not going to come into an uncomfortable environment. It's going to be where we're going to be here to support you.
When it's hard to get buy-in in this profession, and you know, one thing I'm really proud of this unit, and I'm very fortunate to see it all get put together, and it really started at the top. We had support from Chief Garcia, Chief Ramirez, and that's where the buck started. I mean, it just, you know, and I always talk about when I speak on this unit, that this unit has kind of been a lighthouse or a beacon in the fog of war in this profession, that people know where to come. So as many people as we reach out to through the checkpoints, we have probably more people now that we're established and people know where to go to come to us to ask for help. And, you know, gosh, from my standpoint of being in the Associate Officer Foundation, I am so glad that we started this. We already had this in place before the unit was put together, and it's been a godsend as far as having counselors. And now we've since expanded it. I'm looking at 3 new counselors that we had that we did not have before this unit started. And so we had to expand to accommodate all the people. Bills are going up, but that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's amazing. The work that you all have done, it is an example.
Well, we're happy to have you be a part of it.
I'm so happy to be
and this show is to do exactly what we're talking about. I'm not at the end of it. At the end of this commercial, I'm not going to tell you that side effects may include diarrhea, dizziness, and all that. But you know, but maybe it will for somebody.
Yeah. Some of my clients get dizzy.
Yeah, that'd be unfortunate.
Yeah, but
they can turn off the radio.
Joe, you're right. Like, we as wellness units and peer support programs, we help bridge that gap for our people and manage those expectations and normalize that process, right? And so I think the messaging that we give make it okay for our people. And so one of the things that I like to tell the officers that I'm connecting with counseling is that, like, this first one may not be it, right? Like Amanda was saying before, like, half of the battle is like finding someone that you connect with, and like I may not connect with this first person that I go to, and that's okay.
On average,
right?
it's 5 therapists.
Yeah, 5 therapists. So putting that out there ahead of time and letting them know, like, hey, this first therapist may not be your jam, but I'm also here. Like, if they're not, like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and let's find someone that is, helping. Right? And so I think once we start to normalize those conversations, like, because I know it's hard to take that first step, right? And when you take that first step, you want it to be it, right? But also knowing it may not. And being realistic, and that's okay, right? And so another thing that I like to tell my clients when they come in, because they'll come in and they're like, man, I've been to 2-3 therapists and I didn't like them, it wasn't a fit. And I'm like, well, what didn't fit about it? And then they said this and this and that. Did you tell them that? Right? Because, like, I'm here for you, and if I'm doing something in therapy that's not connecting with you, like, we pivot and we adapt and we make this tailored to you. But if you're not having those conversations with your therapist, if you're not telling them what you're looking for, what you're wanting to work on, then how are they going to adapt to you? And so I think that's also something that we have to normalize also in the conversation.
Well, I think one thing is people also have to be honest with their therapist, because the therapist they're only getting what you're giving them. If you're going in and giving a minimized version of what's actually going on, or you're leaving out some key parts, y'all do not know that.
And that is so true, because I know I tell my clients all the time, if you give me BS, believe me, we're going to make the best out of this BS. But that's the reality. But that comes a lot with building rapport as well.
Right.
And I always tell them, you're not going to give everything probably this first day, but building that rapport is huge, that they will give it all to you.
Perfect. I want to get into CBT. Who wants to get on that? Cognitive behavioral therapy? Sasha?
I mean, so cognitive behavior therapy is kind of like one of the tried and true, like, that's kind of where you, like, kind of start off at, right? Because you know it's been around for ancient times. And it's so it's the OG, and all of these other modalities are kind of built from bits and pieces of that, right? And so, like, we'll talk about EMDR, those cognitions that we use in EMDR come from CBT. There's also trauma-focused CBT. I'm not trained in that, so I can't really speak on that.
I'm certified in trauma-focused CBT, and it's predominantly used with children between the ages of 3 to 18.
It is the gold standard for children, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the gold standard for children. Very, very excellent process. A lot of basically going into telling the story of what occurs. And the majority of my kiddos, but we'll talk about, I use TFCBT with them. And CBT it's kind of like the grandfather of everything. It kind of falls underneath. But it's basically retraining the mind, and a lot of that thought process, and a lot of different tools used to correct those negative cognitions that come within. And with the children, the trauma focus part of it really came to with me working at the Advocacy Center and those children going through the trauma there. And just being able to basically, the formality is basically step by step. And it's also a lot of psychoeducation for the children, because when dealing with TFCBT, it also teaches them to learn to express the different emotions that come along with it. Because a lot of times, even as adults, sometimes we don't know how to actually label those emotions and what we're feeling. So yeah, it's very highly used with children.
What does the TF stand for?
Trauma focused.
Okay.
It weaves in, I was trained in TFCBT as well, but it weaves in narrative therapy into the process.
How does that go? Like,
that's
explain that.
What she was saying about telling the
story. Okay.
And so with kids, that can look a lot of different ways, and they can be creative in how they don't have to write it. Some of them want to write it like a storybook. Some of them want to do it in pictures, and the process allows for it to be really creative because everyone tells their story in their own way. And that's something even adults can learn from, is allowing that space to, what are your words? What are the best ways that you can express what you need to express?
Well, a lot of that's factored in when it comes to kids. I would imagine that's what their environment is, and the communication within their own household, because that's a learned, right?
And kids are very creative. Well, I know we'll get there, but kids are very creative because they use drawings. I have a couple kids. Oh, I've learned so many raps from my kiddos that come in to tell their stories. Music is amazing. And we will listen to songs in therapy. We will do all that because they can actually tell their life story with the lyrics from different songs, pieces together, pictures, sand, everything.
Yeah, I always make my my adolescents create a playlist of their emotions for the week, right? So what's on the playlist this week? And we sit there and we listen to it, and I'm like, whoo, that was deep. Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, you're like, why do you have the sound of silence but disturbed on there?
That's so good, though. That's such a
we
good
need
one.
to get into that.
So to kind of break it down a little bit, so cognitive behavioral therapy is a top-down model. The theory is if you change your thoughts, cognitions, because we like to make everything complicated. So cognitions is thoughts. By changing your thoughts, you can change your behaviors. So the trauma-informed part, effectively, this is way too simple, but to try to make it simple, trauma is a very guilt and shame-based experience, even if you've done nothing wrong. So kind of like Brene Brown says, if you all know who Brene Brown is, she's like amazing in our world. So she's actually she's a licensed master social worker. She does the research. She doesn't do the clinical, but she studies shame, and she talks about how to address shame, you have to shine a light on it. So what they're describing is ways to shine a light on what's happening. So when you throw in narrative therapy and you can tell your story and you actually can see it in daylight and realize, oh, it wasn't my fault. You're able to change your thoughts. It will change your behaviors. Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Great way to explain that.
Yeah.
That's why we're all here. That's why we're all sitting around in one room, and this is exactly what I imagine. I want to get in EMDR. We have talked a lot about EMDR since the show's inception, going back to you're gonna laugh at me, Kent, to episode 12 with Tanya Glenn. She was kind of like doing it in the mid 90s, when Oklahoma City bombing happened. So, and I think it was looked at kind of like a quack work back then. Yeah. And now it's kind of like it's a heavy hitter.
It is, for sure.
You want to jump into that, Tempa?
Yeah, sure. So I am an EMDR consultant, so I'm pretty passionate about this work. It's what is the best fit for me as a therapist. I do other types of approaches, but once I became EMDR trained, it just clicked with me, and the efficacy of it is amazing. And it can be done in a way that's still pure to the model, but also flexible with the client, which is something that I really like about it. It can be pretty client-centered. It allows for that space of not having to tell the whole story. They don't have to be re-traumatized, similar to what Amanda was saying about CPT. But it's complicated, and it's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. Just let me say that. And before I ever would use EMDR, I became a client of EMDR myself, because I was not going to do something that I hadn't experienced myself. So very powerful for me and many others, but it's a 3-pronged approach. We address past, present, future. It's a way of reprocessing the parts of traumatic memories, and some researchers within the EMDR community call them pathogenic memories. Those memories that were not integrated in a healthy way into our system. So we have memory networks, and EMDR uses the adaptive information processing. It's the brain's natural way of healing itself. The EMDR uses that to heal the impact of trauma or anything adverse. You know, trauma is a buzzword, and it is a thing, but you can call it lots of different things, right? It's experiences that impact us over the years, and until we integrate it and heal that, then it's going to continue to give us negative symptoms in our lives over the years. So that's kind of a simplistic way to frame that. So, so the eye movement desensitization reprocessing, eye movement, the bilateral stimulation of the brain is very similar to what we naturally do in our REM sleep when our eyes move back and forth. During REM sleep is when we process information. So that's when we process everything in our memory networks. The things that get stuck and are not integrated in a healthy way are going to be those things that contribute to the stress response that could lead to PTSD. So we also store memories in multiple ways. We store them through all of our senses. And a lot of times they're stored in our body. And one thing I love about EMDR is it's a brain and body approach. So it addresses the processing of these implicit memories that are stored through other senses that are not just cognitive. There may be memories stored in our bodies that we don't consciously remember. But we have the sensory information, that's data that we experience on a regular basis. And so EMDR helps to reprocess that without having to recall the memory, which is really powerful.
And a lot of things could trigger that memory.
Yes.
By a smell or a sound.
Exactly. And you may be experiencing a negative emotion symptom based on that trigger of smelling something or hearing something. A lot of first responders have sounds that they can't get out of their heads, right? So sounds, images, even smells. And so, and you may have blocked out the actual memory, the story of it, the narrative part of it, but you're feeling negative, like you may be feeling like you're going to cry and you don't know why.
Or just get angry or frustrated.
Or angry, yeah. Usually with our guys and girls, it's anger.
Anger. Irritability.
Yeah. So that's kind of like a really simple, short way of explaining how the process works. And would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think
Sasha?
you said it perfectly.
Okay. So I wanted to speak to this because it's very much part of the neurobiology of how we are impacted by traumatic experiences. And this goes to like our profession. If we are going to address human struggle, then we must utilize and understand and be able to equip our clients, our people we're helping, with the tools to learn about their system. Mm-hmm. We have a nervous system that's controlled by our brains, and the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system, that's our fight or flight response. Okay? So when we experience stress, prolonged stress, high levels of stress, that's how we are wired, is to respond a certain way. So when people are struggling, it's actually how we're wired. The way we respond is how we're wired. And there's a reason for that. But we can also utilize our parasympathetic part of our nervous system that's already built in to regulate that. Mm-hmm. And I know at the Brave Fight, Sasha and I do a lot of psychoeducation through the Brave Fight about our window of tolerance and the typical behaviors that are associated with being hypervigilant or hypovigilant. In order to be able to manage your high-stress jobs, we must learn how to stay in our window of tolerance and stay out of our hyper and hypo vigilance. And that's a framework that a trauma therapist, in my view, should be helping our clients learn.
Especially because you get a lot of people, because the EMDR is like big now, right? And so they're seeking an EMDR therapist, wanting and expecting to come in for a session or two and be done with it, right? But they're coming in and they don't have those emotional regulation skills, those coping skills, or any of that, right? And so it's like we have to build that up first.
Yes.
Because I can reprocess this memory for you and reduce this negative cognition, but like then I'm sending you off into the world to re-experience traumatic things, right? And if you don't have those tools for yourself, then you'll be right back in my office. And though, like, I want to make money, right? And that would be great for me. But, like, I want you to be able to navigate the world on your own, right? Yeah. That's the goal. And so I think that is something, because I feel like with EMDR, and because, like, as therapists, we are busy, right? People are coming to us now, right? And so, like, it's so easy to get in the habit of, okay, let me just work this and reduce this for this client and then send them off because I have this big list of clients that are waiting in my queue to come through. But, like, I'm not doing giving that person a good service. I'm doing them a disservice by doing that. And so
So learning to use your parasympathetic, the calming system. You have calm body, calm mind. And the parasympathetic system is related to rest and digest. How many people who are in high stress careers like first responders who have their guts are all messed up?
Trauma response.
It's a trauma response.
Your gut is a trauma response.
Yeah, exactly. So it is a disservice, Sasha, I agree, if we don't equip people to be aware of how their bodies and their systems work.
And that's where the psychoeducation comes in.
Yeah. Very much so. And I think that really stands out, as Tempa's mentioning, because it almost is eye-opening. It's like that aha experience, because it also validates how they're feeling, because a lot of times first responders don't even realize that this is going on with their body because of not having that educational piece. And so providing that educational piece actually makes it say, okay, I'm not just messed up per se or things of that nature. This actually is science, and this is actually, I can see this now. And I even find them, I had one client saying, we talked about that window of tolerance and you were talking about my red area and my green area. I went home with my wife, and in the shower, I'm drawing it with my kids' colored soap planted in the shower, explaining it. And so I thought that was amazing, because then they can share this education with their families, as well as, this is why I'm acting this way, or this is what's going on within me.
Yeah, because if we stay in those red or blue spaces, right, our kids are,
Yes,
right? And so I learned that the hard way, right? My kid, he was throwing tantrums and all the things, and I'm like, this kid is bad. Like, this little sucker is.
Look who the mom is.
It's like, golly. But then, like, turn the mirror to myself, like, I'm throwing many adult fits, right? And so, like, I modeled that for him. And so, like, getting this right for us also changes generations.
No, you're good. I want to ask somebody, I'm going to ask this question. So somebody that's been a long-time cop or veteran, combat veteran in the military, the more you do it, it's like working. You build up a natural tolerance, and your stress threshold kind of expands, and it stays there. The more you're constantly in a hypervigilant state, you're going on less sleep. Your diet is accustomed to eating out of convenience because of whatever shift you're on. And I think that that's how people operate at a high level, because they have had so much experience. It's awful experience, but they have expanded their stress threshold. Do y'all see that a lot? And then when people go home,
I think it's a false sense of expanded stress threshold.
And after a while, they just can't.
It's when they stop, they realize, oh.
Yeah.
It's like saying high functioning alcoholic. Just because you can function as an alcoholic doesn't mean that you're not struggling with a...
Well, one thing that I noticed, I was off work with an injury, and my stress level was much, much, different than when I was out on the streets running and gunning. I get back and I'm kind of easing back into it. I mean, really, I'm not even doing what I was doing before, but I would go home at the end of the night and it's like I took a Ambien. I mean, I was like so exhausted because my mind was so mentally out of shape. I was not being, I had a break. I had a nice break from that type of exposure, that type of critical thinking, that type of up and down with my cortisol level. You know, and then I literally would go home and I'd be driving home and I was like dozing off.
Right. It shows you how adaptive our systems
Yes.
are. Yeah.
And that's not always a good thing.
Yeah.
No, not a good thing.
Over time, then at the end of the career, we may have medical problems and a lot of
cardiovascular
issues. Yeah. And while we're doing it, we're like, man, I'm good to go.
I'm going.
But when you couple all that together, right, the trauma response that your body's going through, and then you start feeding yourself junk food and caffeine and
And
the
that
massive
puts me
amounts
for
of
the
sugar
night
that we
shifts
eat
most.
because it tastes so great, man, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Well, it's not just that they taste so great. Your body's craving something.
For sure. No, the addiction to sugar is insane.
Well, but it's not even just that. That's actually a trauma response too. So what we don't realize is that when we're seeking things out. So think about police officers, right? We look at porn. We look at alcohol. We look at
Speak for yourself.
high risk behavior. I'm just saying.
She set
I'm just
herself up
saying.
for that one.
But if we think about this, everybody likes to shame like these are, bad people. But no. It's not like someone just decides to go seek out something that really isn't healthy. When we've been through trauma, our body is constantly looking for ways to kind of get a dopamine release, to start to feel better because you've got a surge of cortisol, you have all of these things going on. So sugar actually provides happy releases in your body. So when you eat sugar, you feel better. So that's why we tease about donuts, but that's like straight up sugar, right? So I think we miss that a lot of times things are actually trauma responses that we don't realize. When we go and if you think about alcohol or porn or gambling, that's the one I was looking for. All of those are going to give us this amazing, pleasurable response. When we are dealing with cortisol and constant trauma, the reason we seek these things out is to balance it. Your body's actually trying to find its symbiotic state, right?
Yep.
The problem is we're never supposed to be this high. We need to be doing more things to keep you safe while you're working. And that's kind of like why I started my practice, and I think why these ladies also do the work that they do, is because if we start to do the healthy things while we are working, so while we're police officers, while we're first responders, and we get healthy during, we're not going to have those really negative releases, and we're not going to need to seek out those things that are going to bring some relief or some good feelings after really bad feelings.
Yeah, and you're going to be a better partner, a better police officer, a better dad, mom,
Human.
all those things.
Yeah.
And what's seen sometimes as well, Joe, as you talked about when you were out for a while, a lot of times what I see is that when the firefighters a lot are going to this 4896, or even with our officers on vacation, you are so used to being in that high. And so when you actually are on vacation or taking that time off, it's almost that period where your body is not getting that release. And so that's a lot of times where the addictions start kicking in as well, because you're used to living in the red. You're used to being up there. And when you're not getting that rush, your body wants that rush. So it's not even their trauma completely causes it, but just always used to living in that state. Your body is craving that. And so that's when we do start getting a lot of our porn addictions, are gambling, are doing these more risky behaviors, because it brings that excitement, and that's what you're used to in the field.
Yep.
I want to get into family therapies, and everybody feel free to jump in with your own perspectives or your experience in it, because I want to, who usually sees the side effects of PTSD the most. It's the people that go home to. Whenever I know you see individuals, but do you all see couples as well?
Yes.
Okay. Can y'all describe the dynamics, and each of y'all jump in with it and chime in on this, not all at once, obviously, but just the dynamic going from individual, then when you have two minds sitting there with similar problems.
as Joe looks at me, my practice does not yet do couples. So
Okay.
here's something to I would like to speak to that though, and why. Because a lot of people will say they do couples, and they don't actually have a specific training or experiencing doing such. So I want to make sure that that people see the right therapist. I'm kind of waiting till I find the right couples therapist, just like I did with my children's therapist. But we do at Finding Freedom Therapy do parenting groups. So as Sasha was saying about how it was very like she realized that her behavior was impacting her kids and what different things happen like that. But I loved how she shared how that impacted her child. So although I don't see couples, what we'll do is I will have the parents come in. And I use Circle of Security parenting. And we actually do a reflective parenting group, but I do individual sessions because how we are as parents directly impacts our kids. So I always tease that I wouldn't see the kids because I'd get arrested for assaulting the parents, since the parents play such a pivotal role. Thankfully, Jess, my adolescent and kids therapist, is very patient and amazing. But I do see the parents, and I'll have them both come into a room, and I actually get a cool experience with that, because for the most part, when I do have a couple coming in a room and they're not doing couples therapy, it actually helps them align, because the best way for parents to align, even if they're having problems, is they both love their child. And when they know that what I'm teaching has 50 years worth of evidence that's been tested and proven to do a lot of amazing things, and how simple it is, I've had some beautiful results with that. So I will let these other wonderful, impressive women talk about the couples.
I am Gottman method level 1 and level 2 trained, and Gottman and his wife, John Gottman and his wife Julie, basically have been working with couples with evidence-based research, and they've worked with couples for over 50 years. And being trained with Gottman has given me that background working with couples, and then tying it into working with first responders has really molded it together. And basically through Gottman, there's a lot of stages that we go through working with the couples. The greatest thing is, though, basically getting them aligned on the same page, and a lot to do with communication and the styles of communication, and making sure that when the couples are communicating, recognizing when you are in that state of mind that it's not the best time to communicate. They have what's called the sound house relationship, and what that is just basically setting on the foundation of things such as building your love maps and making sure that you are on one accord within your household. There are also ways and styles that we work through where, when we are learning listening skills as well as being the listener versus being the communicator. And a lot of times when we are communicating, when couples communicate, we talk about the 4 horsemen, which basically break down the aspects of criticizing one another when talking. You go into defensiveness when, you're trying to communicate and one party becomes defensive when the other party's communicating with them. There's also stonewalling, where you're basically just kind of blocking out everything that's being said by your partner. And then there's contempt, of basically holding the person in contempt. So I am Gottman trained, and so I work with couples. I really got into wanting to get the training with Gottman due to working with children. And as we have mentioned, behind every first responder, every child, there is a parent. Parents. And so I always tell the parents of my children that basically, you're bringing your child to therapy. Can we talk about who you're seeing? Because a lot of our children are developing from the households that they are being raised in, and they play a large role. So that's what led me into Gottman training. At this time.
And that can turn into generational trauma in this. But
Very much.
It's just how we do pass down generational trauma. Yeah. So Gottman is the Gottman approach is one of the gold standards for couples therapy. EFT, emotionally focused therapy, is another one. I do want to say something about the 4 horsemen. It's like, to me, the most powerful part of the Gottman legacy. That is such a standout piece, because you see it once you realize what it is, you see it in your own lives, in your, your own families,
Again and again and again.
again and again. And I bet almost every couple that comes into my office is experiencing those things. And the stonewalling I see, and I hate to say this, but as a first responder couple myself, and in the ones that we see at the Brave Fight, the Four Horsemen and the stonewalling and the defensiveness it's like elevated. It seems to be more elevated in first responder couples.
Because the natural response to shut down.
Yeah.
And so when you shut down, how do you function in a relationship?
Yeah. And couples become disconnected, families become disconnected. And so and this is just my philosophy, but one reason is we become disconnected with ourselves first. Then we become disconnected with others after that. And in order to be able to connect with another, we have to do the work on ourselves before we can truly work on our relationships. So I'm just putting that out there as a...
That's perfectly said, because I tell all my couples, we enter into our marriages with our luggage.
That's it.
You're carrying your suitcase and they're carrying theirs, and then you're going to try to combine your things together. Top part of that luggage is all that pretty stuff. You make sure everything matches and you're looking good for each other. But as you dig deeper into that suitcase, that's when all the hurt and pain and, just anything that you've grown up with that makes you you. And so pretty much every single person that comes to couples therapy, I am recommending referring out for individual.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and I will say that with my couples, when they're not in individual therapy, the progress is we're staying in the same little cycle, right? You have to do that personal work and work through that baggage, and I can't focus just on you when I have both of y'all in session.
What kind of dynamic do you see when it's, because Sasha and I both are married to first responders, and you as well, Cydney. And what do you see in Tempa? So what do you see as far as first responder and first responder?
First responder.
Yeah. Kent's not.
Kent, no?
No.
Oh, teacher.
Teacher, yep.
Different kind of first responder.
Yes.
First responder still.
Joe's my life partner, though, so we're good.
Yes. No, nobody listens to this, so we're good. How difficult, what do you see, what challenge do you see with that dynamic walking in the door because I know a lot of people, they only gravitate to other first responders because you hear again, another cliche saying, well, nobody else understands what we deal with. And do y'all see that when it comes to seeing people sitting in your room?
Everybody's nodding. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, if you think about you're trained to respond a certain way to threat. And think about how we have emotional threats too. And many people who do service work, whether it be as a police officer or military, they will report in therapy that the emotional interpersonal stuff is the hardest thing that they ever have to deal with. They would rather deal with the worst thing out here on the street than have to deal with that.
Usually somebody else's mess to clean up.
Yes,
really.
Yes, and that's different when it's somebody else's, right? Yeah, so that training kicks in on how we respond to threats at home. So when you have two first responders together, you get like a different dynamic, and that fight or flight response kicks in, and you get stuck in that loop, and you can't get out because you're too much in the fight or flight to be able to be calm and vulnerable with your partner.
And what I notice is a lot with the first responders, where both parties are first responders, is the critical stress, they come in, there's a situation at work. The benefit of both being first responders is that they can kind of work through that and process that because they're both relatable in the field. And, you're not going to traumatize someone from that information. So that is a benefit I see. But when we are usually coming to couples or marriage therapy, it's not really about the critical calls. It's the chronic stress. It's the day-to-day. Our schedules aren't matching up. We're both stonewalling, so we're just going to shut away and turn our backs to each other. It's more of the chronic everyday life events that are occurring that actually what comes to therapy.
Okay, do you see, I know both of them, you say, can relate to what the other is going through and what they've seen as far as just bad shit. Mm-hmm. Some of the things we see, we go home and just tell somebody that's not in this environment, they'd be shocked. Mm-hmm. And that even goes for some counselors mm-hmm. that you could go to. Do you see that as a detriment in some ways? You can get into an echo chamber, especially because, let's be realistic, first responder world is very cynical, and there's a lot of negativity mm-hmm. in this world. Mm-hmm. And you get in your own echo chamber, and I could see that being a problem as well.
Most definitely. I mean, it's the processing thereof, but then it's also what they can take. So it's that communication with each other. If they are a first responder, is this something I can even clear off my plate with you? When they are not a first responder, I even tell my couples there that you still have to have some version to be able to bring home. And the reason being is because the way that social media is and things that are going on, you can't just walk home and say, when they say, well, how was your day today? Oh, it was good. I'm fine. That's not going to work. Everyone says, I don't bring work home. That's not the truth. We bring work home with how we're acting, our emotions, our irritability. Mm-hmm. So you're bringing work home every day. You might not talk about that call, but, you brought it home.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You brought it in a whole different way. Mm-hmm. I totally agree with what she just said because I experienced that for years as a spouse. Mm-hmm. And he thought he was doing the right thing by not bringing it home.
He was protecting
quote,
you
unquote.
from, he thought he was protecting you.
In his mind, he's protecting me from hearing about his work. But he wasn't, because the nonverbal, or the other ways he dealt with our normal home life situations, and then we both dealt with it, right? Because it takes two. It's not all on him. It's me too, because we all bring our own luggage to the table. But that is a huge factor, and Cydney, you said that perfectly.
Joe had mentioned something about how you guys, if you go to a therapist, sometimes they can't handle the stuff that we're talking about. And you guys have all kind of admitted to trying the modalities before you use them on people. Mm-hmm. What do you guys do for yourselves? Because you deal with the people that we're talking about right here so frequently. What do you guys do for yourselves to take care of yourselves?
Great question.
So this is one of the things that I kind of work with peer supports on as well, because y'all get trainings, but for me, I had to go to grad school for 2 years, and my entire grad school was very focused on how do we stay healthy and how do we take care of ourselves. I was lucky to be a part of a program like that. And so it's all of the natural things. You'll know if you have a healthy therapist. I'm not saying that someone who is burned out and angry can't do good work, because sometimes they actually really can. But I tend to know if
they're like a cop,
right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. But you're going to know someone who's got a good balance because you can see it. So you want a therapist who, I'm not going to go see a therapist who's got a terrible marriage, right? Or isn't married or doesn't know how to handle things. I want to know that who I'm seeing can take care of themselves, knows what's going on, knows that they found a balance that they're okay with. So all the things that I teach my clients, I also do. So we do an owner group for practices, because owning a practice is really stressful. I do different peer supports myself with other therapists. I have my own therapy. Most therapists who do trauma work have actually tried pretty much all of the modalities. At least the really good ones have, because we want to know, because we're going to be referring out. So transmagnetic stimulation, neurobiofeedback, all the different ones that are out there, because neurobiology has caught up, and there's a lot of things that are neurobiological that you can do in regarding traumas without even talking about them. So making sure that you're doing the things that you need. My primary thing, and what we go over in the psych eds, is water. I always have a water with me wherever I go. And so there's a lot of little things and a lot of big things that you can do to take care of yourself. But it's a daily thing that you have to do to make sure you're okay.
You have to create your own recipe.
Yeah.
I wanted her to explain the water because I've heard it many times in your psyches, but and we actually I parrot it as well whenever I talk to officers. But can you explain that why?
Yeah, so it was so funny. I put together this whole entire training for the psych eds after critical incidents with the Dallas Police Department, and at the end we're like, so what worked? What did y'all take away? And like 90% of the time it's like water, and I'm like, what? Like water? So what we don't realize, and like what Tempa was talking about, how the body incorporates traumas. It's not just our thoughts. Our bodies take everything on. And so when we go through trauma, we're actually having a release of multiple hormones throughout our system. So if you're on a call and in that moment you feel like lasered in, you know exactly what you're doing, that's cortisol and multiple other hormones coursing through your body to help you stay alive. And immediately when that's over, you're going to hit like almost like a wall and be exhausted. And then you have this release of all these hormones in your body and you're exhausted. And then you got to go do paperwork. So what I'm always telling all of the people that I work with, everyone, not just first responders, is that we need to be drinking water regularly before the traumas even take place. Because what happens is our body can kind of bounce back after that. So if we're taking water prior to any of these things happening, our body's going to be able to flush out the hormones simply and more quickly. But if we're dehydrated, it's going to take a lot longer. And honestly, most every single first responder, especially officers, don't drink nearly enough water because they're trying to stay awake. Like Joe, oh, you got hydration now. He was drinking a Monster earlier. So what we have to do is kind of flush our system out to get all of our body back to its natural state. Have either of y'all gotten a massage before?
Yes.
Yes.
And what do they say right after you get the massage?
That's
Drink
a
water.
dangerous question.
They say, I don't know what kind of massage you're getting.
Water.
Depends on if it's off Harry Hines.
So maybe we need to talk about massage parlors.
Yeah. No, drink water.
Drink water, because when you massage muscle, it releases knots and different tensions. And when it does that, it's actually releasing different things throughout your body. So we need to be able to flush things out of our system so we're at our basic state. So water's one of the most amazing things you can do. So depending on, especially after intakes, when I have clients come in and we get a kind of a thorough idea of what's going on, the first thing I say is you need to go home and drink a lot of water.
That was actually one of my big takeaways when I went to go talk to Dottie was I'm not eating right. I'm ingesting massive amounts of caffeine to try to make up for a lack of sleep. I'm not sleeping well because of the caffeine. There's a vicious cycle right there, right? Mm-hmm. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, stupid. You should just drink water. And I'm answering my own question right there. I'm just like, how dumb was I to just not drink enough water? And then as soon as I started drinking more water, everything fell in line.
It seems so simple too. And
it is. It's not super hard, right?
Yeah, and it's something, I mean, we all should be doing it, but I will say that when you're out working the streets, and especially in the dead of the summer, and it's hard. I mean, you're wearing all that crap. You're sweating in the car while you're driving, and then when you get out, I mean, that's why our undershirts are just soaked. And you can never have enough.
Water in has to be water out later, right?
Yeah.
And if you're actually working in patrol, you don't get a potty break every hour.
Be a female.
Yep, that's a huge thing.
Right.
Actually, I've had so many conversations
I'm
with
not
the
doing
females.
that yet.
Yeah, no.
Not yet.
2026, Joe's year.
But she's right. Sasha, can you talk a little bit about that more? Because a lot of my female officers won't drink for a very good reason.
So, like, it's a lot of stuff that we got to take off. And, like, who has time to do that as often as you're going to have to if you're drinking the amount of water that you need to? Mm-hmm. And so,
it's like a natural dehydration. It's like I don't have the ability. It's not safe, or I can't, pee 12 times during a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
and I can.
It's hard.
I can if I really wanted to. I could.
Yeah,
but
it's hard.
I've seen that Shiwi appliance. Have you seen that?
I have heard.
That is a conversation I've had with multiple female officers. I kid you not.
Someone had that.
But it's a thing. And one of the first things, I've literally had someone sit down and start talking to me about, they're like, I'm not using a Shiwi.
I feel like sanitary things like come into play with.
Because then you have to carry it, man.
No,
you have to bring that.
My old partner on the CRT, she tried it for like 2 days, and it was too much splatter. Apparently, it did not work. So that was discontinued.
I bet she's really going to appreciate you sharing that story.
Yeah. I didn't mention her name. Angie Fox.
But yeah, so I think when we're trying to take care of ourselves, you want to find a therapist who does the things that they need to do. He's not going to, he's just going to keep
No, we're good. We're good.
Yeah. And we're thank you for asking that question, because the vicarious trauma of hearing the trauma, and because when somebody's telling me their story, we are tuned in to the client, and we're trained to hold space, but sometimes we can tune in even a little too close, and it's so draining. It's so draining on us. And then you're visualizing what you're being told. It's being visualized in my head. I have a movie in
Of
my
course,
mind,
yeah, because
right?
you have more details than you would get from the news.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And so it's important that we take care of ourselves and do our own therapy. And we bring to the therapy room our own background, our own experiences, our own stuff. And if we don't have our shit together, we can't help anyone else.
That's the best way to say it. I know working with children, one of the big things is water. You see, I have my big jug here. Also, I learned to really set my boundaries. So there are days where I will not see clients. I had to really set that from the beginning. Also, I have 8 grandbabies. And so I spend plenty of time with family and just all that, because working with kids, it gets heavy. And so just being able to go and kind of have that release. So it's learned. It was learned, though. I will say that I had health issues that came into my life because I wasn't setting my boundaries, and so in doing what I needed to do for self-care. And I'll tell you, either going to do it now or you're going to pay for it later.
Yeah. I really like that you brought up boundaries. I feel like we're adults, right? And sometimes it's hard to create extra space to do like the massages or
Go to the restroom.
Go to the restroom.
We giggle, but it's so true.
Right.
Shout out, Shiwi.
But like setting healthy boundaries, right? Having those boundaries, saying no to some of the things and not adding extra stuff to our plate, right? That's also just as important. And I think that it's so simple, right? But it's a concept of self-care that we often don't associate with self-care.
Well, we say it's simple, but I think for most adults, I mean, most people like have like 12 jobs. Joe said this is like his side gig, which cracks me up because it's so well done. And you're going nonstop with peer support as an officer, and then your downtime is another job helping people. So I think it does sound simple, but as adults, as parents, as professionals, it is hard because we actually have to go out of our way to schedule it to be okay. Yeah. And what Tempa was talking about, kind of like, I call it the trauma threshold. What did you call it?
Window of tolerance.
Window of tolerance. Again, psychology, you're going to hear the same thing multiple different ways, and one of them will stick. But we call it the trauma threshold. And so as therapists, which I would also like to say that we do see therapists, and I think therapists are actually the forgotten, not first responders, but we kind of have everyone's 6. And at some point, we need to make sure someone's got our 6. So I think that's something that's probably there's not enough care for therapists. But I think therapists are pretty good about finding our support within each other, and why like this talk, it's so natural for the 4 of us to speak together. But when we leave our sessions, we need to go and we need to make sure that we don't pass our window of tolerance or our trauma threshold, because I won't go watch Sons of Anarchy. I had to wait like 2 years to watch it to where my trauma sessions were down so I could actually spend some time watching it. And so I'll do different things, like my family knows that, like, if I've had like multiple traumas, or like, when we went through everything we went through this summer with the ambush.
Officer Burke's murder, yes.
Yeah. We had to, I had to do a lot of extra care because I was working and then I'd be at the station for a while. So in that moment, it's a lot of water. It's also a lot of breaks, and it's a lot of like comedy and other enjoyable things. I'm not going to go home and watch an intense, amazing show.
Saw movie.
Yeah.
I have to pause this real quick, and not really pause, but I have these headphones on, and we're talking to these microphones, so there's a little bit of weird sound. But I could have sworn you said you have 8 grandbabies.
Yeah,
I do have 8 grandbabies.
I thought you misspoke when you said you
No,
retired from dispatch
I-
earlier, and I was going to say maybe she just left after a few years.
No,
you
look like you're 30.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, she
That's
does.
good. That's
No,
a
it-
good thing.
That's amazing.
After
Whatever
working in dispatch and doing therapy.
whatever you're doing is working.
And life
Yes,
don't
it
brown.
I'm a little confused right now. I'm still kind of. I was like trying to do the math in my head. Like, no, you look.
I saw
look
the
fantastic.
befuddled look on your face, and I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, we were all thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are
I
these
have
on? Is
8
this
all
working?
boys. All boys. The oldest is 7, so 7 and down. All
Oh, man.
boys.
And you have 3 children, right?
We're a
children now?
blended family,
Okay.
so we have a total of 5. Yeah, we have a
Sounds
total
like
of 5.
chaos.
They range from
And you don't have a gray hair on
30,
your head.
30. I have a couple in there. Every time I get a new grandbaby, they come. They range from 30 to almost about to be 31 to the youngest child is 19.
Damn.
Yep.
You could
We're
tell me you were
busy.
31, and I'd be like, cool, yeah,
Oh,
Let's,
yeah.
100%.
let's go with it.
I
I'm
think that's
31.
about right.
Let's go
31
with it.
today.
Yeah, go with that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, on the topic of children, I want to get into that. We touched on it a little bit before, but I really want to dive deeper into it with the difficulty of talking. You mentioned a number to me that was kind of, I put it in the back of my mind. You said, 3 to 18 years
Yes.
old? 3 years old.
3 years old. Yes, definitely 3 years old. And I'll tell you, probably my 3 to 6 year olds, they bring in, parents always say, oh, they may not talk. They're not going to play much. And I always tell my parents when during intake, tell me everything I need to know that's going on in the household. Because if you don't tell me, they are going to. And
Probably a lot more honest than the
a lot more honest and,
And they know
very
so much
direct.
more.
The challenge with children are not the children. It's usually the parents, because the parents want to say, oh, my kid's having this problem or my kid's having that problem. And yeah, we see these things that are going on, but it's a lot of what's going on in the household that these children are being affected by.
And they bring the child in, here, fix my child.
Yes.
And I have nothing to do with it. So,
And then environment doesn't change, and it very much is
Yes.
often the environment around them needs to change.
Yes. Working with, and I didn't intentionally dive into children on purpose. I didn't say, hey, I want to be a therapist and work with kiddos.
We got all that practice as grandma now.
Why not?
I'm telling you.
5 kids and 8
Yeah,
grandkids.
I mean,
She was trained.
yeah, you're an
Trained to
expert
do
already.
it. So I actually when I went out to the Ellis County Children's Advocacy Center, it was my trial period. And I got there and I loved it. And I think what really touched me was I was in the process coming to the end of my career at the police department, and I had several calls that I can remember that touched me with kiddos. And when I went out to the Ellis County Children's Advocacy Center, I felt like, you know what? This is actually what puts the period. It's going to be what my ending is, because I've taken so many calls where these kids are crying on the phone, and I felt like, okay, I sent you the police officer, I sent you the fire department, but what happened to these kids' lives afterwards? And so when I hung up my headset, I told myself, this is where I get to shine, and I get to be part of that, what happens afterwards. So I can go from taking the call to, let's go ahead and heal these children and work through what they need to be worked through and moving forward. First responder children come in a little bit differently. I'm going to say we raise our children differently. We know what's out there in the world. We're sheltering them. We are more open with them. You talk about 3 years old starting, most definitely, but I will tell you, a first responder 3-year-old is not your average 3-year-old. They're going to come in there and they're going to tell you everything they need to tell you. But they're also very intelligent. And in this world today, everything's on social media. These kids are knowing what are going on. And I tell my first responder parents, please don't promise your kid you're coming home.
Oh, I've had that
Please
conversation.
don't. It's
Yep.
hard. It's hard to not tell your kid that. But I will tell you, I have worked with children of line of duty death officers, and it sucks because those kids thought their parents were coming home. And it's one of those things to where I had to learn self-care. working with kiddos in that population. Not only just being a therapist there, but also just being in the first responder family, because we know that hurts.
Right.
So basically, I mean, they're kids. I like it because I can be me. I don't have to sugarcoat anything with the kiddo, because I tell you, they probably heard worse from their parents. So I really enjoy working with them. But the greatest thing that I get out of it is the fact that working with the children today helps what's going to come tomorrow. Because if we can work through these traumas and the things that are going on, it can help. Lastly, with first responder children, a lot what that's been on the rise is because of social media and, you know, the way the world is today. Some people, it seems to be the firemen are loved, or firefighters are loved, police officers aren't, not so much so. And I know when I was growing up, it was like, hey, my dad or my mom's a police officer. And it was like, yay, yay, rah, rah, rah. Now it's kind of like, do you want everyone to know that, just because of the way the world is? And so talking through with my more teenagers of what that means to them, and when they see mom or dad put on that uniform, what exactly does that mean? So our kids they have a lot of anxiety and stress just over the job that, you know, parents are doing.
That's a lot for them.
I'm glad
to
you
carry.
said that, because I've worked with kids of fallen officers who talked about being bullied because their parents were in law enforcement.
Most definitely. And so it's just one of those things of knowing the culture, kind of explaining as well, because, you know, mom or dad missed their birthday or the holidays or that sports event. And it, for the child, is normal, but when all their teammates say, where's your dad? Where's your mom? And they're never there, you know, that becomes stressful for the child.
Yeah.
And so just working through, they are also living the life of the first responder, because it's not that typical, you know, family or Monday through 5 job where everyone's home on the weekend and home for the holidays.
Yeah, it's not banker hours. And, you know, we've had on we try to touch on every aspect of this profession and units and types of investigations. We had on a child abuse detective that's been doing it for 20 years. How hard is it for you, or any of y'all, when you're dealing with a child and you know they're in a bad situation and you can only do so much in that hour and a half, and you have to, you know, they're going out that door?
It's difficult. No matter who comes into my office, I treat every session like the last session, and I try to push out tools and tools and tools, because I don't know if they're going to make it back. As far as a parent bringing them back in, an officer, this might be my one shot, or a firefighter, this might be my one chance. So I'm going to make sure that 50 to 60 minutes we're in there, that it shines. They're going to take something away every time they come in.
I love that.
Yeah.
And we
Every
do a lot
session.
with the parents themselves. So we try to, and you're going to hit on this kind of with family therapy, but one of the things that we do, for my child and adolescent therapist, Jess, so she can manage it, we try to get a lot of buy-in from the parents up front. So that's what I think therapists who do child and adolescents get missed on, is they're doing so much work outside of the session. I mean, we all do as therapists, but it's literally having to call possibly divorced parents, trying to keep everybody on the same page, and doing our best to make sure there's buy-in so that kid is safe. And then, like, if y'all are having issues with the parents, send them my way. I don't work with the children because that breaks my heart. But I'm glad that we have Jess now who does, and then we address the parents and help them see kind of where they're coming from. Because a lot of times the parents don't even realize when you are in the first responder life, or honestly just parenting, being a human, we're trying to balance so many things. I don't think that we realize how much how we engage with our children impacts them. There's actually a PTSD book. It started for veterans, but I do believe they have one for first responders now, but it's called Why is Daddy So Mad? And that book kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I'm so glad it exists, but it's a good point of, like, everything that you just said, Cydney, gave me goosebumps. First of all, your why is beautiful. But what these kids are having to carry day in and day out. And we miss that as parents because we're so busy trying to take care of our jobs. and our lives and keep them alive and keep them fed, that we sometimes forget to connect with them. So my job is to, in the reflective parenting groups and in honestly sometimes individual sessions, help the parent look at what is your situation? What did you experience when you were growing up? What have you gone through? What does connection mean to you? What does it mean to you when your child does this? And we found, kind of using the circle of security and attachment. So Joe, earlier you kind of looked at her when she was like 3. You can actually start therapy very young with kids. If you ever get bored, look up still-faced experiment, and it shows a baby who's 8 months, maybe? Under a year. And this little baby, and it watches the mom interact with the baby. We don't realize how much kids are taking in. The first 2 years are vital. And so I do a lot of education with the adults. So I go to schools. I help, because one of my practice as a specialized trauma treatment is we try to stop transgenerational trauma. And since initially we weren't working with kids, I would work with the parents. And so I do a lot of parent education. But the connection starts immediately from birth on. In those first 2 years, how we connect with our kids, how our kids know if their needs are being met. So it's fantastic that you started as young as you do. I love that. But I think it does take a lot with the parents. And now family therapy, that was really hard for people to do before. Because in insurance, that's why mental health is so hard, because insurance kind of controls what we can and can't do. And if you're like me, the population you work with, you need to take insurance, which is frustrating because insurance companies do limit. So there wasn't like the right coding for families, but one of the programs that I work with, Headstrong, they're spearheading a lot of work with families because the reality is we can do individual therapy, and we need to work on our own stuff. But we were never meant to be alone, and we weren't really ever meant to heal alone either. And so for the kids and the parents, and creating an environment where everybody can heal, and getting culturally competent providers who can actually work with the entire family without making the parents feel shamed, to normalize, okay, we see how you got there. Now where we can go, like where can we go next? What does the healing look like for yourself and your kids and the family as a whole? So that's actually hopefully up and coming. I'm very, very hopeful there's going to be a lot more family therapy options.
And just to kind of put out there for the insurance, because we all know how that goes, I do want to let first responders know that there is a grant out there through the First Responder Children's Foundation, which actually provides 10 sessions for children of first responders, and they cover up to 25 years old. And so it's not just your little ones up to 18, but it actually does cover up to 25 years old. And if the first responder is 25 or under, they will actually cover their 10 sessions for them as well.
Oh, that's
I did
nice.
not know the 25, it went all the way up to 25 years old.
No,
I always
I didn't either.
refer.
Yeah, it goes all the way up
For
to
that one.
25 years old. So, and it's it's excellent. So they don't really require much of just sending in information.
Thank you for all of these comments. They're amazing. And I'm just going to put one more thing that goes with everything you're saying is children and some adults too, like children and partners, internalize and sometimes don't understand when their parents coming home, say their parent's an officer or a firefighter or whatever, and they're dealing with their own stuff and they're shutting down, or that maybe they're hypervigilant and anger, whatever. The child internalizes that, and and sometimes the partners do too, because they don't understand why, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so we develop from children on these negative beliefs about ourselves. It's my fault, or I'm not enough. And it starts when we're children. And that is why this work that Cydney and others are doing with kids is so important. And we carry that with us.
I see in this unit, the wellness unit, we see a lot of officers that come in here or reach out to us looking for help for their children. And, since Cydney has been involved with the ATO, I know that I have sent quite a few down to her.
You guys have mentioned a lot of different certifications that you have, and like countless at this point, to be honest. do you find that they overlap and kind of help each other, or is it kind of like frowned upon to mix one with the other?
Oh, they definitely overlap. There's nothing new under the sun. We just organize
In
all the
different
human
ways.
things in
Rename
different
it.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost like
go ahead.
It's almost like you go with your client, what your client needs, because I will take a little bit of this and I might have a little bit of Gottman, and then yes, we're going to roll into a little bit of EMDR, and then with my kiddos, I'm going to pull some play therapy in. So you kind of mold what you need for your client.
Because there's not a one size fit all.
No.
Yeah. And in therapy, we're always pivoting, right? So you may
Yes.
start with something else. Like I have a client right now that we were doing EMDR. That's what she came to me for. But then I also mixed in IFS, which is internal family system. And that jammed with her better. And so like we paused the EMDR and now we're like, okay, well, we're going to focus on doing the same thing, right? We're trying to get to the same goal, but through a different modality because that one jammed with her a little bit better.
And that piggybacking on what Sasha said in the beginning, that's why you must verbalize, and hopefully you have that rapport with your therapist. If this is not working for you, let your therapist know, because there are so many different modalities and different ways that we can go about things, but we won't know unless you tell us.
Yeah.
And a lot of the modalities build off of each other. So, well, it's really funny because you can say the same thing in a different way with a different modality, and it's the same thing, it's just worded differently. But neurobiology is catching up, and so we are getting more and more advanced, which is phenomenal. I'm very excited to see what happens next. But they kind of all build off of each other. And like if there's like CPT or cognitive behavioral therapy started like understanding how the brain worked, and then it sounds like EMDR even built off of that, and it sounds like ART built off of that. So a lot of them work really well together, and just kind of get better and better, and different ways to explain things as well.
We have had several of the counselors come out and do psych education, which, I mean, I'll say several, but Courtney has come out and done a couple, and we can't make anything mandatory. We kind of set something up. Amanda has been out here several times for our psych education, especially after what happened August 29th of last year with Officer Burks being murdered and Carissa David being shot and Farmer being shot. And there was such a ripple effect through the entire department from all levels. The first responders were there. There was a secondary location with a shooting with a suspect. And then you had the processing, the hospital. We had crime scene. We had to get, Amanda came in and saw the crime scene techs the week after. And, and they deal with so much because they actually had to go in and process all those scenes and process Officer Burks. So, Amanda, can you kind of talk about how you approach the psych education for our department?
I would love to. So I was honored to be called out by Sergeant Fig to look over and to kind of be present with people after major events that took place and help better understand what happens to us and what we go through both physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so I kind of was looking through what information they had and wanted to update it. So I kind of had the ability to create my own little program. And what I've done is I cater it specifically to whatever event I'm going out to. And I'm able to connect with the officers or whatever unit I might be speaking with. So we had initially done it for an officer involved shooting or a critical incident. But for Officer Burks, that was a completely different week. All of Dallas was hit very, very hard by that in every single department. And so I think I was out here 5 times 1 week, and I did 5 different psych eds. And so what we do is we come out and we kind of walk through what that group is going through specifically and what they can expect, what's really common, when to start worrying and when not to worry, because grief and reactions after trauma are appropriate. Most of my goal is helping people understand that trauma reactions are natural and appropriate. First responders often don't believe that if they have a natural human reaction that it's appropriate. When it actually is, that's a good sign. I hope y'all stay human. I want you to stay human so you can keep doing the good work. We just might need to tweak some of the support so that you're okay in doing the work that you're doing. But having a human reaction is very appropriate and very healthy. And so I'll walk through whatever that group went through. So when I came out for crime scene, it was a completely different psych ed than those who had to show up where Officer Burks was shot. Because those are two different things. When you're actually having to do work and process the evidence of someone that you know and cared for. And that was even more heartbreaking because a week after Officer Burks died, one of the ladies that, one of the wonderful women who was in this room for my psych ed died unexpectedly.
2 days later.
2 days later. And so now we've got compounded grief and it feels like the world's falling apart. And so we worked with that group a lot. And helping people understand that initially it's okay not to be okay. And we think that means we're not going to function, but every single first responder I have met still gets up and does what they need to do to be okay and to go do their job. But making sure you take care of yourself outside of that is vital. And so a lot of what we do is we'll make sure that the officers know what to expect with their body, know what to expect with their emotions, know what to expect at home. One of my big things is talk to your spouse about the things that you can. Obviously, you can't talk about certain aspects, but a lot of people think they can't talk to anybody. But just like therapy, you don't have to talk about the event. You can talk about how you feel, what you're struggling with, and that actually isn't related to the event. And then I haven't met one first responder spouse that isn't badass anyways. So there's no reason not to talk to our support system. I think that a lot of times that's our own avoidance. And we keep forgetting that we're human. So one of the things that I love that the wellness unit does is that they allow for me to come out and to be with these different groups. And it's actually been pretty cool because I'll come out and I've actually had last week, I had two call from, actually, I think both of them were right around from when we lost Officer Burks. And it's been months, but it took them a second to think about what they were needing. Some of them have been through multiple incidents. Like, I don't know how many times I've been to Southeast, South Central, actually, South Central. And so there's compounded things. So understanding that this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. All right, I'm seeing some symptoms. Amanda talked about this. Maybe it's time to make a phone call so I can make sure that I'm still okay. The ultimate goal in what we do with mental health for first responders is to keep them healthy enough that they can keep doing the job that they love. And there are so many ways to do that.
100%.
Yeah, and what I do want to put though out there also, because you never know who's listening. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. What we do not do is we do not talk about the facts of the case or the incident. That is just say, there's some people, you can't talk about it's a debrief. No, we do not do debriefs of the incident and the facts or the specifics. It's about what the body is, what's happening to your body and your mind after this incident.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data that shows that that's not helpful. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of got misguided in an attempt to help and to be more open about mental health. They're like, oh, we're going to discuss the details. But what I'm hoping that this podcast does is help explain that there are actual science-based, evidence-based modalities. There's actual structured things that can help. And we know what works. And we know also what doesn't work. And so if you look at the data, kind of processing in detail about certain things doesn't help. But processing what your experience is, how you're going through that, becoming more reflective and becoming more of an expert on yourself, that is what's going to help you stay in this field.
Yeah, acknowledging how you actually feel in that
reals.
moment.
Yeah.
You're right, and you don't have to say what happened, but to acknowledge your feelings. Yeah.
And how that impacted you.
Yeah.
And same thing like what Cydney was saying about the kids. Like, what are you carrying? That's what we can help. And whatever the incident was, that may not actually be what it was. I was working with a couple that had a Dallas police couple. So again, I don't do couples, but they came in for something separate together, but they were going through as a family. But they came in because of that loss. That was the tipping point that helped them face another struggle they were going through. So sometimes what we process isn't actually what just happened. it's previous things that got triggered and brought back up, and it was
Yes.
the straw that
Yes.
And I think
broke the
that's
camel's back.
that's one of the things that we saw with Officer Burke's death is that a lot of people were being re-triggered from 7/7, right? And that experience and kind of the wounds that weren't healed from that kind of came back up for a lot of our officers, and so
Well, they were like, here we go again.
yeah.
You know?
And it's normal for everything makes sense in the context of your life.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way of saying that.
Very much.
First, I want to thank y'all for coming on and doing this. You know, I said on break that this is exactly what I had a vision for, and getting all of these minds together at the same table. But I want to ask a kind of final question of each of you. Like, let's say we have a lot of listeners that are Dallas PD, that are non-Dallas PD, fire, non-Dallas fire department, that listen, and really just any other human being out there that may pick this up and hear us. When somebody walks in your door to your practice, what can they expect to see in order to get help and get their life back on track?
Well, when they walk into my practice, they are going to initially walk into a non-judgment zone, basically coming in with open arms to help. Going to be pretty real and straightforward. Nothing's really going to be sugar-coated. We're going to come in, and I tell all my clients during their first session, number one, I don't sit on this side of the couch because my life is perfect. So that's one thing I definitely want them to know. I also tell them that they are the expert of their life. And so we're going to work through this together. And I just explain that it's a journey. I want them to feel safe and comfortable. And that goes from my little kiddos. So half of my office is built for kids and the other half is built for adults. And I find a lot of my adults actually pulling out the bricks and the Legos, and that's okay. We can do that. But I just want it to be their safe space, and I give them that opportunity to do so. In a judgment-free, just welcoming zone. Usually have water to sip on, as we talked about water, Amanda. So there's water there. I have kiddos, so I have my little snack bucket with snacks, and it's just a welcoming environment to come in because, you know, I've sat on that side of the couch, and it's intimidating to take that first step in through the door. And I also let them know that it's also a zone where you can take off your uniform. And I don't mean that literally, I mean that figuratively, but you're allowed to take off your uniform and come in here and just shed and share whatever needs to be talked about.
Be human.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cydney. I agree with all of that and can say ditto to everything you said. But we at the Brave Fight, one of the things that we like to say about our team, and we have 10 clinicians plus interns, and is that we're all humans right along with you. We are walking with you, and that we have our own human struggle that we have overcome. And it's brave and courageous to take the step to actually learn about yourself and overcome your obstacles and your adversities. And you bring in strengths that you have forgotten about. Yeah. And we want to help you find those again. You have answers and strengths inside of you that matter and that will lead you forward. It's not our job to tell you how to live your life or what's best for you. We're going to collaborate with you in finding what works best for you, and so you can rediscover the strengths that are within. Non-judgment. People bring in their own culture, many different aspects of culture, from work, family background, race, ethnicity, so many beautiful shades of color and texture, and it's a beautiful thing that we can work together and learn from one another. We learn from our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And we take that and help the next client from what we learned from this client. It's a beautiful process both ways, but it's also a really brave, hard step to take. And we know that. But we want you to feel safe, comfortable, We're not fluffy. We're direct. On our team, we see kids 5 and up, so 5 to 99, and we have current former first responders. We have veterans. We have family members of veterans and first responders, and we have some civilians on our team too, who specialize in their own unique areas with kids and families. And so we see anyone from any walk of life, and everyone's welcome.
I mean, you said all the things, right? Both of you. I just, for those walking into my office, expect to work. We're not going to stay on the surface. And so I set that expectation ahead of time. I'm going to meet you where you're at, but we're going to go somewhere. We're not staying there. And so I just like to set that expectation, because some people, they think that they're going to come in and I'm having this symptom and we're going to reduce this symptom, and we're just going to stay there, right? I'm going to get some coping skills and then I'm going to leave out of here. But those coping skills, those symptoms are there for a reason, and we're going to get to the root of that so we can pull out those roots.
I love that you shared that, Sasha. So at Finding Freedom Therapy, we are a specialized trauma treatment. And so what we're able to offer is actual relief and healing. So for anybody who's listening, know that there are multiple practices out there with very culturally competent, experienced therapists. And if you take a moment to find the right therapist, you might be surprised at how different it is from what you expect. So at our practice, we're very honest, we're very real, and we actually have a lot of resources that can help reduce symptoms within sometime as quick as 1 session, up to 4 months. So sometimes we're so scared to start trauma treatment, and it sounds overwhelming and like no one knows quite what to expect. So what I'm hoping that this podcast does is helps all the listeners and all the different people understand that it doesn't have to be that scary. You're going to meet real therapists who can engage and process with you what's going on and actually reduce symptoms surprisingly quickly if they're culturally competent and trained. So don't let trauma therapy scare you. Don't let choosing to start living your life again scare you. We all have this opportunity to continue to do what we love and be in a profession where you can change the world, but you have to be healthy doing it. So my hope is that everybody takes a moment to think about what their needs are and how to be the healthiest version of them. And if it happens to be therapy, I hope this podcast helped explain some of that and opens the door for people to reach out. I know that if anybody called me, or probably anybody on this podcast, we would help you find the right therapist, whether it's our practice, another one in the area. I have even looked out of state. I may not know someone personally, but I will help you find someone who's got the experience that you're looking for to help your healing begin. And so you can start living your life again.